What if I told you that an ancient biblical prophecy could be coming true right now, and that the next pope could be the right-hand man of the Antichrist? Imagine this. The Vatican bells ring as always. The halls of the basilica seem calm. But in the silent underground, far from the eyes of the world, secret documents and forbidden books are being carefully hidden from humanity. Why? What is so dangerous to be locked away from the truth? What do the Vatican secret archives are they trying to hide it? And if the answer is directly linked to the most feared figure in the apocalypse? In recent years, scholars, former church members, and independent researchers have been warning about something dark, the possible arrival of the eighth king, mentioned in Revelation 17:11, an entity surrounded by mystery and destruction, an ancient prophecy, forgotten by many and hidden by others, that may be taking shape right before our eyes. But the scary thing is that all of this isn't coming from random internet theories. They are biblical texts, ancient manuscripts, and apocryphal records that point to the same dark fate. A new pope, perhaps already among us, being shaped to fulfill a prophetic role in the end times, a role that many believe is directly linked to rise of the Antichrist. The Vatican, enveloped in centuries of hidden secrets, unknown rituals, and decisions kept under oath of silence, always denied any involvement in conspiracies. But then, why were certain prophecies never taught openly? Why sacred books were banned of the original Bible? Why are there hidden tunnels beneath Rome storing documents that no believer has ever been able to see? Today you will discover why so many scholars believe that the Vatican is already preparing the world for the eighth king, a name you may have never heard, but which could be the missing link between ancient times and the destiny that awaits us. And what's coming could change everything you believe about faith, power, and the truth we've been taught. But before we dive even deeper into this prophetic mystery, I want to make an important invitation. If you feel that there is something wrong with the world, if inside your heart you sense that we are living in different times, if you, like many, believe that there's a truth being hidden behind the altars, leave your prayer request here in the comments. Yes, that's right. Let's turn this community into something more than just a revelation channel. Let's make it a spiritual refuge, a place of light in the midst of darkness. No matter what your faith, religion, or doubts are, write your prayer request in the comments, because we will pray for you, and together we will resist what is to come. Believe me, there are forces operating in silence, and when Vatican secrets come to light, the spiritual battle intensifies. Therefore, we need to be united, firm, alert, and prepared. If this message is already touching you in some way, if something inside you is saying, I need to know more about this, so leave your like on this video. This helps the content reach more people who are also searching for the truth. It is clear, subscribe to the channel now, because we will continue investigating the forgotten prophecies, you banned books of the Bible, you hidden documents from the Vatican, and everything that most people are afraid to show. This journey has just begun, and what lies ahead will leave you speechless. The eighth king's prophecy is just the tip of an iceberg that connects religion, power, and the destiny of humanity. And in the next part of this video, you will understand what it really says, Revelation 17:11, and why so many believe that the beast of the end is already among us. The beast that was and is no longer is also the eighth king. These words are written in the book of Revelation, chapter 17, verse 11. Many go through this passage without realizing how prophetic, mysterious, and dangerous he really is. For some scholars, this is just another apocalyptic symbol. But for others, especially those who have dedicated themselves to studying the banned Vatican archives, apocryphal Gospels, and the books taken from the Bible, this verse carries a veiled warning. The emergence of an ultimate power, a spiritual leader with the appearance of light, but who would carry with him the darkness of the end. The phrase is enigmatic and purposefully ambiguous. The beast that was and is no longer seems to indicate something or someone that once existed, was destroyed, or disappeared for a time, but would return. And the most shocking thing, this same being would be considered the eighth king. But who are these kings mentioned in Revelation? The chapter itself speaks of 7 kings, 5 of whom have already fallen. 1 exists and the other has not yet come. And the 8th, he would be different from everyone else. because would be of the same essence as the beast, i.e., not just a political or spiritual leader, but a figure that carries within itself the very spirit of perdition. Some theologians and former Vatican researchers believe that these kings would be symbolic representations of leadership throughout history, and, more recently, of specific popes who shaped the direction of the Catholic Church. The most controversial theory states that since Pope Pius XIII, we have a symbolic count of 7 prophesied popes, and that the next pope, or maybe even the current, it could be this much talked about 8th king, a pope who would not only be a man of faith, but the last link between the visible church and the Antichrist system. This idea, of course, is opposed with all its might by religious authorities. But isn't it strange that so many prophecies have been ignored? How many ancient texts have been banned and burned? What to Vatican's secret library, with its more than 80 kilometers of underground shelves, is guarded so jealously that not even accredited researchers have full access? What's inside that can't be revealed to the public? What is the church afraid people will discover? The most disturbing thing is to notice how the world scenario seems increasingly aligned with this narrative. Religious leaders approaching global political systems, interfaith unity speeches that sound good on the outside, but hide a possible spiritual and ideological control plan. The world is being prepared to accept something, or someone, that will present itself as a solution. And if that figure comes dressed in white, smiling in the name of peace, promising spiritual union, but behind it, there is fulfilling the prophecy of the 8th king, there's a strange feeling in the air. Many feel, even without fully understanding, that something is about to happen. And we're not talking about cheap sensationalism. We are talking about biblical signs, ancient statements of forgotten saints, prophecies of silenced priests, and historical documents which were never released by the Holy See. In fact, some authors denounce that the private letters of former popes, which clearly mentioned the proximity of the end time, were completely removed from the public archives. Coincidence? And when we look at the structure of the church today, we see a change in discourse, a strange flexibility, a break with age-old traditions. All of this has left scholars even more restless. Are we really before the last pope of St. Malachi's prophecy? Does the title of Peter the Roman, the Pedro of recent times, is being silently assumed? Maybe that's why so many people are silently beginning to awaken to this reality. And maybe that's why interest in prophecies, religious conspiracies, and Vatican secrets is growing so quickly. Because something inside us realizes that the truth is close, but hidden. And this video isn't just about ancient history or ecclesiastical legends. It's about the present, the now, what is unfolding as you watch this. And I want you to tell me if you feel this way too. If any part of this message resonated within you, if this alert awakened something inside, tell me here in the comments. He writes, I see the signs. Or if you want to be more direct, comment, the 8th king is coming. Your participation here is not only important for the algorithm. She is a symbolic act of resistance, a call to spiritual vigilance. And if you haven't done so yet, enjoy this video right now. This helps spread this message to more people who are also starting to realize that there is something the Vatican has never revealed and may never reveal. And if you feel like you need to understand all of this in depth, subscribe to the channel, because we are just beginning to expose the threads of this great network of ancient secrets. In the next section, we will show in more depth who the 7 popes of this count are, where this theory comes from, and what exactly St. Malachi's prophecy says about the last pope of the church before the final fall. Get ready, because the revelations that come next will challenge everything you've learned so far, and could forever change the way you see the history of faith. If we have had 7 popes since the prophecy, who would be the 8th? This question has intrigued scholars, alternative theologians, and even former members of the Vatican's own clerical structure. And to understand this count, we need to go back to what was said by a mysterious figure often ignored by the Church, Saint Malachi. According to apocryphal records and visions considered forbidden, he would have prophesied a sequence of popes with symbolic details, linking each one to a specific phrase, many of them wrapped in metaphors that only make sense after the facts come to fruition. This list, known as the Prophecy of the Popes, ends abruptly and somberly with the arrival of a last leader, Peter the Roman, the Roman Peter, the one who was supposed to lead the church during its final destruction. But here comes the part that connects everything, Revelation 17:11, where it is mentioned that the eighth king belongs to the seven, but is heading towards perdition. The most frightening interpretation, and perhaps most logical, within prophetic symbolism, is that the eighth king would be a spiritual repetition of the previous seven, but with a corrupt essence, a hidden function, perhaps linked to the preparation of the path of the Antichrist. And when we align Malachi's prophecy with Revelation 17, something begins to fall into place like forgotten pieces of a dark puzzle. According to this prophetic vision, the first pope of the modern count would be Pius V, who took office in 1922, when the world was about to plunge into World War II, and the winds of change were beginning to blow. His motto, Fides Intrepida, intrepid faith, well describes his stance in times of conflict. Soon after, we have Pope Tuthad, known for its ambiguity in the face of the advance of Nazism. The prophecy calls him Pastor Angelicus, the angelic shepherd, an irony, or a clue to the spiritual duality that was already beginning to infiltrate behind the scenes of faith. The third in the sequence would be John XXIII, called Pastor and Navigator, the Pope who dared to convene the Second Vatican Council and open the doors to profound reformulations within the Church, changes that to this day are seen as the turning point of the Catholic tradition. Then we have Paul VI, Flos Florum, the flower of flowers, someone who continued the reforms of his predecessor and was the first pope to visit every continent, but also the first to openly deal with the growing abandonment of traditional faith within the Church itself. Then comes John Paul I, the so-called De Mediatate Lunae, from half the moon, whose papacy lasted just 33 days, a death shrouded in mystery, theories, and files that to this day the Vatican avoids discussing. Many believe he discovered something that shouldn't come to light. Soon after, he enters the scene John Paul II, the De Labore Solis, or the work of the sun, a charismatic, media-driven, venerated pope, but who survived an attack and faced powerful forces, internal and external. Some say that he knew of the existence of documents that spoke of the eighth king. The seventh would be Benedict XVI, the Gloria Olivae, the glory of the olive tree. His papacy was marked by intense conservatism, allegations of corruption within the Vatican and, most surprising of all, for his resignation, something that hadn't happened for centuries, a decision that divided theologians around the world. What did he know? What made him abdicate? Would he have been pressured? Or, as some suggest, was his departure the signal of the beginning of a new cycle? And then we arrive at the current figure, Francisco, a pope loved by many, criticized by others, who brings a speech of inclusion, peace, and simplicity, but who has also been involved in global, interreligious meetings, in statements that, according to more orthodox scholars, break with sacred dogmas of the Catholic faith. Would he then be the eighth king? Or just the preparation for the arrival of a new pope, who will emerge after his death or resignation, assuming the final role? One hybrid pope, symbol of union between religions, but who would secretly fulfill the role described in the scriptures as one who will give power to the beast. The prophecy says that he belongs to the seven, which many interpret as a spirit that will inherit the characteristics of previous popes, but distorting each of them. He will appear saintly like John Paul II, he will have the firmness of Benedict XVI, the humility of Francis, but he will be none of them. He will be the reflection of everyone, but he will carry with him the essence of the beast, a spiritual copy of everything that was, but used for dark purposes. And when we connect this with the documents that the Vatican keeps under absolute secrecy, with the archives that speak of unauthorized appearances, letters from silenced psychics, and hidden prophecies that were never made official, everything starts to make even more sense. There is a symbolic construction, step by step, to lead the world to accept a figure that will bring unity, but that will hide destruction within itself. The eighth king is not just a prophetic figure. He is an end-time symbol, a veiled warning hidden between the lines of Revelation, among the corridors of institutionalized faith, among the texts the Church decided you shouldn't read. What has the Vatican done that raises suspicions? This is a question that many avoid, but that more and more people are daring to ask out loud. And the answers do not come from empty theories or mere speculations. They arise from subtle gestures, strategic omissions, images loaded with dark symbolism, and a strange change in posture that has been growing year after year, as if a silent transformation was taking over the church from within. A transformation that does not break with Catholicism explicitly, but that slowly shapes it, moving it away from its deepest roots, bringing it closer to something more global, impersonal, and perhaps prophetically dangerous. In recent decades, the Vatican has adopted public positions that have caused astonishment, even among the most devout believers. Important documents about biblical prophecies, such as the third part of the Secret of Fatima, for example, were disclosed in an incomplete, truncated form, and with visible omissions. Several theologians claim that the content officially revealed in 2000 is far from corresponding to the version described by Sister Lucia in her original letters. And more than that, why did the Holy See wait more than 80 years to release these messages, which, according to the Virgin Mary herself, should have been known in 1960? The silence, this heavy, prolonged silence, echoes to this day like an unspoken scream, a contained warning. And this is not an isolated case. The Vatican has maintained strangely silent on topics involving the end times, even in the face of a world in spiritual collapse, wars, climate signs, hunger, economic collapses. Where is the prophetic voice of the Church? Why doesn't she talk more openly about the apocalypse? Why do homilies prefer a diplomatic speech, light, without tension, without confrontation with the forces that clearly operate in the world? Many wonder, why does the current Pope avoid speaking out about the deepest spiritual dangers? Why is there so much talk about ecology, universal fraternity, religious tolerance, and so little about sin, the final judgment, and the second coming of Christ? Wouldn't this be the ideal time for a true spiritual leader to announce the eternal truths of faith? But instead, we have meetings with leaders of all religions under one tent, statements that place all faiths on the same spiritual footing, and an exaggerated emphasis on global unity, a unity that, although it may seem beautiful, may be preparing the ground for a single world religion, prophesied as one of the steps towards the dominance of the Antichrist. And the signs don't stop there. Inside the Vatican itself, there are visual elements that give chills to anyone who observes them carefully. One of the most talked about examples is the Paul VI audience room, whose interior presents an architecture that, from a certain angle, resembles the head of a serpent, with glass eyes, side fangs, and even sculpted scales. This isn't theory, it's pure observation. It's there, in plain sight, but few stop to question it. What kind of subliminal message is being sent by having a pope speaking from the mouth of a serpent? Coincidence or symbolism? Another detail that many ignore but which carries a gigantic symbolic weight is the so-called empty throne. In important ceremonies, especially during times of papal transition, the Vatican displays an imposing throne, carved with rich detail, but which remains without anyone sitting on it. To the inattentive eye, this may appear to be just a liturgical object. But for those who study the symbolic language used throughout church history, the empty throne may represent the wait for new power by a spiritual ruler still hidden. What if the true occupant of this throne is not an ordinary man, but a prophetic figure, already prefigured in Revelation 17? In ancient frescoes and works of sacred art, we notice a change in style. The glorious Christ is being replaced by more generic representations. Dark angels appear in corners where there were once enlightened saints. New stained glass windows, erected during post-conciliar reforms, show figures mixing with images from other religions, a clear symbolic movement of fusion between beliefs, but which may be diluting the core of the Christian message. Could this be an attempt to erase the identity of Christ in the name of global unity? Or would it be the slow preparation for another to be worshipped in his place? Many also draw attention to the recent speeches from the Vatican in which a new moral order is promoted, based on social justice, inclusion, and the common good. This all sounds good on the surface, but when we analyze between the lines, we realize that this narrative fits perfectly into the plan of a world governance, unified not just economically or politically, but spiritually. A church that sets aside the cross and adopts the banner of universal causes may be walking, without realizing it, towards the embrace of the false Messiah. Or, and here's where the real danger lies, maybe you're walking consciously. The question remains, why are so many signals being ignored? Why the silence instead of the alert? Why does the Vatican, with all its power, all its history, all its spiritual authority, avoid touching the most uncomfortable truths of Scripture? And why, at the same time, is it so open to dialogue with power structures that have historically always fought true faith? These are questions that need to be asked, because the answer may lie in the details, in gestures, in omissions, and mainly in the symbols. They are everywhere, and you just need to open your eyes to see. Now tell me, have you noticed these signs? Do you believe that there is something being engineered within the Vatican itself to prepare the arrival of a new spiritual leader, the one the prophecy calls the Eighth King? Leave it here in the comments. I see the signs. Or if you prefer something more direct, the throne is already reserved. Your participation not only strengthens this community, but also makes this message reach more people who, like you, are beginning to wake up to this reality hidden under the veil of religion. If you haven't liked this video yet, now is the time. And if you are not yet subscribed to the channel, subscribe now, because in the next section, we will reveal how leaked documents, from the Holy See point to secret negotiations, that could completely change everything we know about the spiritual leadership of the world. And you need to know that. But the question that echoes most among independent scholars, rejected seers and analysts of forgotten prophecies is one that deeply troubles. Why do some believe that the Pope, whether the current one or the next one, could support the Antichrist? For anyone who only hears the word Pope, the idea sounds absurd, even blasphemous. But for those who delve into the forbidden archives, the apocryphal books taken from the Bible, and in the secret documents never revealed by the Church, the hypothesis takes on an ominous shadow of plausibility. And that's exactly why she's so scary. For centuries, the figure of the Pope has been associated with holiness, with the succession of Peter, with the highest authority of the Christian faith. But paradoxically, the higher the position, the greater the impact, if it is corrupted. And that is precisely where the concern of many scholars lies. The idea that the most sacred throne in the world can be usurped, not by force, but with the appearance of light, with sweet speeches, with promises of peace. In a little-known manuscript kept in the Vatican's secret archives and discreetly mentioned by some excommunicated priests, there is talk of a shepherd in white robes who will lead the flock into the desert. The metaphor is clear. It is not a leader who guides to the oasis, but to aridity, to spiritual emptiness. A pope who, far from being the continuation of the apostolic tradition, would be the final instrument for the implementation of a new spiritual system, the universal religion, where Christ is no longer the center, but just one symbol among many. This theory appears even more explicitly in texts such as Peter's Apocalypse, one of the apocryphal Gospels that was rejected by councils for containing visions considered dangerous. In it, there is a passage in which Peter, taken by visions, sees a glorious temple where all people worship a single God of peace. But this peace, according to the text, does not come from God, but from an entity that presents itself as a son of light, but is not. A figure who demands worship, but who rejects the sacrifice of the cross. A false redeemer, a celestial impostor. And if we go back to the canonical Apocalypse itself, we see that the beast does not manifest itself alone. It comes with the support of a false prophet, a religious figure of great authority, who performs signs and wonders, and who prepares the world to worship the image of the beast. This false prophet, according to many modern scholars, could very well be a global spiritual leader, someone who has influence over billions, someone who is seen as a saint, but who secretly serves another agenda. Who else would this description fit if not the papal figure? The movements that have occurred in recent years reinforce this fear. The Vatican has become increasingly closer to Eastern religions, Islam, spiritualism, global humanist movements, and international political entities. Statements that would never have been tolerated before are now made naturally, such as when it is said that God is not Catholic, or when the uniqueness of Christ as a universal Savior is relativized. What is behind this doctrinal relaxation? A sincere desire for unity, or a carefully orchestrated strategy to level all beliefs and prepare them to accept a new truth? Documents revealed by former members of the clergy, such as the famous Abu Dhabi document, signed by leaders of the church and other religions, speak of the creation of a global human brotherhood, where theological differences would be suppressed in favor of common coexistence. In theory, it sounds beautiful, but in practice, this means abandoning principles, silencing the gospel, and prepare people for a single, generic, manipulable faith. A faith where any figure can occupy the center, including a prophesied figure like the Antichrist. Imagine a global scenario in crisis: financial collapse, conflicts between nations, diseases that defy science, increasing natural disasters. Fear spreads. People look for answers. They look for a savior. And in this chaotic scenario, a global religious leadership emerges, a man with sweet words, with an appearance of justice, who unites the nations under a new faith based on love and tolerance, but without the cross, without repentance, without Christ. This man would be exalted, acclaimed, and few would realize that he is not who he appears to be. Many believe that the Vatican itself may be being used, or even guided, to pave this path. A pope involved in this global system would not need to act in explicit evil ways. It would be enough for him to be silent about essential truths. Let him sign treaties in the name of peace. May he encourage a union without distinction of doctrine. May he appear as the spiritual father of all, but without truly shepherding. This would be enough to prepare the platform on which the Antichrist can rise. These ideas don't just appear on obscure websites. There are priests, serious scholars, and even historians within the church who have been warning about this for decades. They talk about the spirit of deception, about the final apostasy, and about the need to monitor. But many of them were silenced, removed, discredited. Why saying that the Pope could be the instrument of something prophetically evil is still considered taboo, even when the biblical texts themselves, the hidden gospels and forgotten prophecies point in this direction? Is something moving behind the scenes at the Vatican? The answer to that question may not be in the headlines, but it is whispering through the silent corridors of the Holy See. Something that cannot be said out loud. Something that is being prepared away from the eyes of the world. Those who observe only the surface see peace speeches, diplomatic meetings, interreligious events. But those who look closely notice a strange pattern, a sequence of movements that seem rehearsed, as if an invisible piece was being placed on the global board. And it all begins, once again, where the center of world spirituality has always been, within the walls of the Vatican. In recent months, rumors have begun to circulate among religious scholars and analysts. And these aren't just loose rumors. This information is extracted from internal sources, undisclosed letters, leaked emails, excerpts from documents obtained through discreet channels. One of the most shocking rumors talks about a confidential dossier prepared by a group of cardinals containing predictions and warnings about controversial decisions recently taken by the church leadership. According to close sources, this material would have been sent to very specific hands within the Curia itself and would not have been well received. Another piece of information that caught attention was a leak from an anonymous diplomat linked to the Holy See. He stated, in a letter published in restricted circles, that there is a silent effort to reformulate the theological structure of the Church in the coming years, a reform not only pastoral, but doctrinal, spiritual, structural, a complete redesign. And most alarming, the new structure would be based on interreligious pillars, moving away from the centrality of the gospel, promoting a faith adaptable to the new world, a moldable faith emptied of its prophetic root, a perfect faith for universal leadership or for something even bigger. These rumors are reinforced by recent events that seem, at first glance, disconnected, but they are not. One of them was the confidential meeting in Rome between leaders of esoteric orders and representatives of ecclesiastical institutions, an event that was not publicly disclosed, but whose images were leaked on private networks. In another episode, There was a strange movement in the Vatican's secret library, with areas being closed for renovations without official explanations. This, combined with new restrictions on access to certain historical archives, raised alarm among scholars who have been analyzing the records of early Christianity for years. And as if that weren't enough, the silence, a deafening silence in the face of urgent issues such as the persecution of Christians in the East, the advancement of anti-Christian ideologies in the West, and the recent demonstrations by world leaders proposing a common morality for all peoples. Where is the Vatican's prophetic voice? Where are the statements that once guided the faithful in times of confusion? Why is everything now so vague, so neutral, so calculated? Many believe that this is neither carelessness nor omission. It's preparation. It's a carefully engineered transition. A transition that does not happen overnight, but in phases, in steps, in discrete agreements, in non-televised meetings. And this preparation has an objective that few dare say out loud: set the global stage for the rise of a new type of spiritual leadership. A leadership that will not divide, but that will unite, that will not bring confrontation, but comfort, which will not require true faith, but collective acceptance. And when that leadership emerges, whether it is embodied in a new pope, a hybrid figure, or even a worldwide religious system, few will realize what is really happening, because they will be enchanted by the promise of peace. That's why you need to keep following this channel, because there is so much more coming. The signs are becoming clearer, the scenes are stirring, and something big is coming. And you need to be prepared to recognize when that happens, because many won't understand. Now tell me here in the comments, do you believe that the Vatican is preparing something in secret? Comment, there is something behind the scenes. Or, if you felt, this message spoke to you, right? I'm seeing the signs. And if this prophecy is true, how does that change your faith? This question seems simple, but it has the power to shake the foundations of everything we have learned since childhood. Because it is not just a symbolic text hidden in the pages of Revelation, but a direct warning, a coded warning, a revelation that perhaps was stifled precisely because of its transformative power. When we talk about the eighth king as a figure linked to the Antichrist himself, we are not just discussing theology or interpretation. We are questioning the direction of world spirituality, the integrity of religious leaders, and above all, the destiny of the human soul. If the signs we are seeing today, the Vatican's silence, the increasingly symbolic rituals, the unity between different faiths, the global discourses of peace without Christ, are in fact part of a preparation for the arrival of this prophetic figure, what does this mean for the faithful? For those who grew up believing that the church would always be the safe home of faith? How to react to the idea that something dark may be infiltrating the behind the scenes of religion, not to destroy from the outside, but to manipulate from within. This is the essence of prophecy. Deception will not come with swords or direct threats, but with sweet words, with promises of unity, with smiling faces that conceal hidden intentions. What if the eighth king is already among us? If he is already being prepared, is already being accepted, is already becoming a spiritual reference for billions, without anyone realizing that behind his image there is a deeper agenda, an agenda that does not aim to save, but to confuse, that does not guide to the light, but prepares for the darkness. The question is straightforward. Is your faith based on the truth or on the image you have constructed of it? Because if the biblical warnings and forgotten prophecies are right, and everything points to that, then the time for comfort is over. It's time to open our eyes. It's time to seek the truth between the lines, in the banned texts, in the voices that have been silenced. The truth may not be easy to accept, but it is preferable to the comfortable deception that so many are embracing without realizing it. And as disconcerting as all this may seem, we must remember that the scriptures have always announced that this time would come, that before full light there would come great darkness, that before the return of Christ the rise of deception would come, that before the eternal kingdom the world would see the reign of lies supported by leaders who appear sanctity, but whose fruits reveal another root. Therefore, more than ever, discernment is needed. It takes courage, and vigilance is needed. If you've come this far, it's because you feel like something is happening and that the answers are not being given at traditional altars. This shows that you are part of a
select group of people who are waking up, who no longer accept living on the surface, and who are seeking the truth behind the Vatican's secret. So, if this content touched you in any way, I now invite you to subscribe to the channel. Here you won't find ready-made answers, but you will find questions that most people don't have the courage, and together, we will explore the forgotten prophecy, the forbidden document, the hidden symbol, everything that has been silent until now.
And if you really stayed until the end, I want to ask you something special. Comment below the phrase, "I won't be fooled." This phrase is our code, our sign that you are part of this journey of revelation. I'll be keeping an eye on the comments, responding, and giving heart to whoever writes. Oh, and don't forget to leave the like now, not only to strengthen this video, but to show YouTube that this type of content needs to reach more people who are also starting to see the signs. And if you want to continue this investigation with us, the next video is already appearing here on the screen. Click now and discover which is the book that the Vatican banned because it spoke directly about the end times. You can't stop here, because the truth is just beginning to be revealed.